Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Hey, hello there. You know what? I want to start today by telling you I love you. I'm so grateful that you're here with us because today I have the most amazing person that I know, and she's in my world. I know Zena for a while now. She's going to tell you how we met. But anyway, I can talk forever and I don't want to. I want to bring my guest on stage, and I would love if you could share this this video, this episode, so that we can help other people be victorious, just like my guest. Stay with us, and we'll see you soon. Zena,
Hi.
I wish I could hug you. I have to tell you, I cannot wait for the day when we're together and I get to hug you.
Me too. Me too. I agree. One of these days, it's going to be a real hug, not a virtual hug.
I know. And soon. It's got to be soon. We're going to have a reunion of our family. So, speaking of that, how do we know each other?
Well, I joined Grow Live Family, back in, I guess it was October now. And yeah, it's been a little bit, and it definitely feels like a family for sure. Like, you guys are just the nicest people, so kind, and just welcomed, me in and poured into me for all these months. And honestly, I just am so grateful to the Grow Life family for sure. And you, Theodore, you are an amazing woman and an inspiration. So,
This is not about me.
but you are. So there it is.
I appreciate you. I honestly, truthfully love you, and I appreciate you and your compliment. Thank you so much from everything that I have. Let's just go ahead and kick this episode off with I want to know everything that I don't know about you that you want to share, of course. I want to know who is Zena. I want to know where do you live. I want to know where you were born. I want to know everything about you. And most importantly, I want to know, I know, but I want you to maybe help others, know how to be victorious just like you are. Because in my opinion, in my eyes, in my heart, I know that you're victorious. And the reason and the purpose of my podcast is so that we can help others be victorious and reach levels of business or personal or, wherever they are in life, where they can listen to your story and take whatever they need to so they can be, victorious in life and in business and wherever. So tell me, where does your story start?
So this could honestly last all night. So I hope you have a lot of time to.
I do. Yes. Yes.
No. So, well, I guess we'll just go back to the beginning. So I was born in Vietnam in 1974. And that was kind of at the end of the Vietnam War. My father was working for the U.S. government as a chauffeur for a lieutenant colonel. So when I was born, he said I had the best of the best because American dollars went a long ways in Vietnam. But when I was about a year old, he went to work one day and basically was told that not only did he not have a job anymore, but that he basically was going to need to leave the country. So we were fortunate. We were one of the first to get evacuated. So we were about a month before the fall of Saigon. So we were very, very fortunate in that. So my dad got us all on the list, and we met at the embassy on the date we were supposed to. My mom said we were packed in the C-130 like sardines, and I can't imagine what that must have felt like, having a little baby in your arms and packing in with a bunch of people and being on that long flight. Because from what I understand, that's a long flight from Vietnam to the United States. And my mom even said she didn't know if we were going to the United States. Even getting on the plane, she's like, we didn't know if we were going to Guam or if we were going to the United States or where we were going. We just knew we were getting on that plane because we had to leave. So the hard thing for my parents was that they were allowed to have all of the family come. So my dad went and put everybody's name, my grandpa, aunts and uncles, cousins, everybody was on the list to go. But the day that we were supposed to go, the rest of the family decided not to go. And well, because it's hard to leave your own country and go and not sure where, and they didn't really know where they were going. The rest of the family hadn't been, they didn't work for the US government like my dad did. So it wasn't quite the same, thing. My dad had to go because had he stayed, it, his future would not have been a future. So, because he would have been considered a traitor. So anyway, so we left. The entire family left. I think my grandpa was my only grandparent that was still alive. So I can't imagine what that must have felt like to get on that plane, like I said, with a baby, packing sardines, and then knowing that you might not ever see your family ever again.
Oh God.
No, so, but I didn't know that. Growing up in America, I was very spoiled, very blessed. I really grew up and was an American kid. And it was
I think you were spoiled. Come on.
Well, I was spoiled compared to probably my cousins in Vietnam, for sure. I mean, we never went without food. I always had a roof over my head. You know what I mean? We had everything.
You were blessed.
I was very, very blessed.
The difference is huge between spoiled and blessed.
Yeah, but I acted like a spoiled brat when I became a teenager because I was very American. So.
Okay. Eric is with us. He's good evening, ladies. God bless you.
Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Oh, good to see you, Eric.
Yes. And
that's so yeah, so growing up in the United States, I didn't speak English until I started school. So I only spoke Vietnamese, is what everybody told me, that I did not know how to speak English until I started school.
Because your parents didn't speak English?
Well, my dad spoke a little bit of English and my mom was learning, but I think they, so they were just beginning, but they also didn't want me to learn English from them. They wanted me to learn English from Americans so that I wouldn't have an accent, which is why that explains why I don't have an accent. I used to think that I didn't have an accent because I grew up in the United States, but then my parents had kids who were born in the United States, but they had very, very thick Asian accents. And I thought, that's really strange because these kids are actually born in the United States. Why do they have such an accent? And hi, Sandy. But then I realized it's because their parents were speaking English to them with their accents. And so the kids picked up, that's how they, would say words. And so my parents actually are pretty smart in that they said, you know what, we're in the United States now. We want our daughter to be able to learn the language and learn it correctly, not incorrectly, because we're learning this as an adult and we're not going to say things correctly. And it's just not, we don't want to disadvantage her any more than she is, kind of, situation. So anyway, so I didn't speak. And so English is my second language. And I know that's hard to believe because English, obviously, I speak very well.
Yeah.
But reading comprehension, I was always behind on reading comprehension. When all the parents were reading books to their kids, not me.
We can talk more about that if you'd like, because I speak Romanian to my daughter, and she's spending summers with my family in Romania, and she's still struggling with switching between the two languages, but I don't think she has a Romanian accent at all.
She probably doesn't because she's probably speaking.
Yeah.
So I speak Vietnamese. So I do speak Vietnamese, and that is the language, like growing up at home, that was the only language I was allowed to speak inside the home.
All right.
Because my parents didn't want me to forget Vietnamese.
Right.
They just didn't allow me to speak English to them, and they didn't speak English to me.
Okay.
So that was kind of that was what it was. And for my sister and I, that's how it was. And growing up, that was a little embarrassing because when we bring friends over, even in that situation, they were like, no, say it in Vietnamese. I wasn't allowed to speak English even in front of my friends. And so, as a kid, that's kind of embarrassing because
they always think about that you speak about them, right? There's always that idea that, oh, what are they saying? We can't understand. So are they talking about me? I know we have that same problem, Alma and I, because she just loves to show off and she speaks Romanian.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's great though that you're teaching your daughter that your daughter knows Romanian and English, because that's something that unfortunately my kids, I did not speak Vietnamese with them because my husband is not Vietnamese, and I didn't live in a place where there's a lot of Vietnamese people, so that becomes very difficult, to really do that conversationally when it's just you got just me and them, because the only time I speak Vietnamese is with my parents or around other Vietnamese people.
Mhm.
But uh, anyways, I think it's great that
Right.
you've done that. So
I know you mentioned kids and husband, but let's go back to school. So when you came in the plane, did you end up in New York or was it East Coast, or do you know where?
well, we ended up in Camp Pendleton, which is California. So at the Marine base in California. So we were there for 6 months in the refugee camp,
Mhm.
and we were there until we got sponsors. So we were sponsored by a family who lived in Arizona, which is how we ended up in Arizona and in Flagstaff. From what I understand, our sponsors were there to help us, and so we ended up in Arizona. My dad said he tried to go to California, where all the other Vietnamese people were, for a couple weeks, but he hated California. And so he went back to Flagstaff, and we lived in Flagstaff for about 20 years, a little over 20 years. And so that was kind of a small town at the time, about 40,000 people, I think, in population. So I think it was good though for us because it helped our family to really acclimate,
Right.
because there wasn't a Vietnamese community. My mom did have to learn English. And even though she had extremely strong, thick accent, she spoke English because she had a lot of friends when we would go visit in Phoenix. I was kind of really surprised after 20 some years, 30 years, 40 years, they still don't speak English because they were living in a community, that was all Vietnamese and they didn't have to learn it, right?
Yes, they're very tight.
Yeah. And it was really kind of cute because my mom's best friends, most of them were Hispanics, and English was their second language. And they all loved to play cards. They would play poker, they play blackjack, 31, and they'd stay up late at night playing. And I
That's
would,
cute.
as I grew up, it was really funny to listen because I think they were trying to say bad words, but they couldn't even say it correctly. So I'm like, does that even count?
That's awesome. That's so cool. And so you mentioned your sister. So was your sister born here?
Yes, my sister was
Okay.
born in Flagstaff. She was born in 1981, so she's almost 7 years younger than I am. And we used to always talk about how she could run for president of the United States because she was American born. So I just remember that was really exciting. She was also born right after she was born, I should say. My parents became citizens. So I remember that same year, she was just a newborn baby, and my parents got, inaugurated, or whatever that the ceremony is called. And that was pretty cool. And we were on the news channel as a family that, just became Americans. And so that was a really proud moment for all of us. And yes, so that was pretty awesome.
That's so cool. That's awesome. And it's I was naturalized, so the event that you have to go through, and it's just such a powerful feeling of belonging. I did not want to be here illegal, and I was going to go back after my contract because I came with a contract for a year, and at the end of my contract, I was going to go home. But meeting my daughter's father and getting married and starting a family, I was here, and the goal was to be here and be happily married for the rest of my life. So going through the naturalization ceremony and knowing that this is where you're building the family and this is where you belong, it's such a feeling. So I know exactly how your parents felt because now they're finally here, and this was home. And so yeah.
Well, and probably very similar to you because, Vietnam became communist, obviously. So they
Yes.
didn't want any ties to a communist country. So to finally belong to a
Yes.
free country meant so much. So it's the same, in Romania, you had the same situation where it's like freedom, yeah, that moment that you become an American. Yeah, you're right. There's no other feeling other than that. And I think, that's why my family, we love America. We love our veterans who fought for our freedom. We just love America because it's a great country.
It is amazing to be here. Take me to, you said earlier that you were spoiled and something about school. Take me there.
So, well, so I grew up in Flagstaff, and I actually ended up going to Catholic school.
Okay.
My adopted grandma, I call her grandma. She's the only grandma I really ever really knew, but my parents were her caretakers, her and grandpa's caretakers. So one of the jobs that my parents ended up getting was being able to caretake for Grandma Goen and Grandpa Goen. So they lived upstairs and we lived downstairs in a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen. And so, but they really did spoil me. Like they loved me like their grandchild. And grandma and grandpa, they paid for me to go to Catholic school. They wanted me in private school. They didn't want me in public school. They wanted me to be able to excel and for the kids to, be nicer and kinder and, all of those. They were just very, very concerned about my well-being. I mean, anything extra that I needed, if I wanted to, for instance, I wanted to learn how to play the piano. Grandma and grandpa bought a piano and they paid for my piano lessons.
You were spoiled.
I really was. And they were the sweetest people. I mean, to the point where my parents, even when they moved to Las Vegas, grandpa had passed away in, I think, the 80s. So he had been gone for a little while. But by the time they moved to Las Vegas in 1995, they took grandma with them. So grandma came to live with my parents until she passed away. So she literally was really a part of our family for so long and was my grandmother. I mean,
Right.
and she was a very accomplished woman too. So I would go and she would tell me stories after stories about how she was the first woman to major in zoology, and her and her husband were herpetologists, and just, very inspirational woman. And yet she loved my sister and I so much, and my whole family so much when we weren't even their blood, and it was awesome to just have, somebody who loved you. So going through school, Catholic school, and then I went, in high school, I was just a typical teenager, just rebellious and wanted to think for myself. And I was just so tired of my parents telling me what to do and what I couldn't do. And my mother never let me spend the night at any of my friends' houses. And I used to think she was just so mean and, she just wanted to ruin my life and all those things,
So funny, everything you say. I'm like, what's that? Are you talking about my mother? I feel like the cultures are so similar.
Yeah.
And the way parents are parenting the children. And yeah, I was never allowed to have a sleepover. And I had one very late in high school. And of course I rebelled and we left the house and I got caught and it was a disaster. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. I feel you.
Yeah. And it wasn't until much later after I had children that I've had that, oh, now I understand. I mean, my mother just came to a country that and a town that they were mostly hippies, right? So a lot of them were protesting the war that my parents just came from.
Yeah.
My mom barely spoke English. So how was she supposed to communicate with the other parents what my needs were? And I'm thinking, gosh, I barely wanted my own kids to spend the night at anybody's houses, and I speak good English and I've been here,
Right.
And yet she had all those things. I'm like, no wonder. She was just being protective. But her comment to me was, Vietnamese girls don't spend the night at other people's homes. So then for a long time, I was like, well, I wish I wasn't Vietnamese then,
You're tough. You're victorious. And guess what? This is all about that.
Yes. And part of the rebellion too, I, had a high school. I wasn't supposed to have a boyfriend until I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
My parents said, not till you're an adult, you can't have a boyfriend. Well, you know how that goes.
Yes.
So I had a boyfriend, and they found out, and that, but they were, my mom said, let's just call him your friend. So they allowed him to come over, and, we'd study, and I eventually married him after college.
Yeah.
But I should not have. I mean, my parents told me years and years ago, he's a nice young man, but we really don't think he's for you. But because I had a rebellious heart, I was like, you don't know him the way I know him. And he came from a great family, and I loved his family. I loved, his mom and dad. I loved his brother and sisters. And I just thought all he needed was love. But so we dated for a total of 8 years. We got married. Well, our marriage didn't even last 4 years. We had 2 kids. And unfortunately, my ex-husband was a drug addict. Here in high school, I just thought he was just a party boy. I didn't ever party, really. I was really a goody goody when it came to that, because if I got caught, my parents would have killed me.
Yes.
So I just never really went there. I mean, I would hang out with my friends and stuff, that was enough. But if I was to be, you know what I mean, engaged in that, it would have been bad if that, if my parents ever found out.
I didn't know how much alike we are. I had no idea. And as you tell me your story, it's like you're talking about me. I didn't know. Wow. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. We're just good people, and we want to find our own identity somehow, like in one way, but we're just having that, let me figure this out somewhat. And we, in the back of our mind, we do have that respect that, we need to listen, but at the same time we want to
Find our own way.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and
How did you
unfortunately,
find out he was I mean, was
yeah,
he an addict, and you
he was he partied, in high school, and I think I was just young and dumb, and I was in denial, thinking he's just going to outgrow it because his friends were able to work and, you know, be accomplished people. But I think after I got out of college and after we had kids and things weren't getting better, he actually got worse. He
Hmm.
started smoking pot more, started drinking more. He'd go to work for a few months and then he'd quit his job because of whatever. And he just couldn't even keep a job, and I was the one that was supporting all of us. He would stay home and smoke his dope and drink his beer. And then, it got to the point, and then he was so verbally and emotionally abusive towards the kids that I finally, the light bulb just went off. Like, I know my parents raised me that once you're married, you stay married,
but this is
you
not
know, but I'm thinking, but if I stay married in this and he's not willing to get better, what am I telling my children?
mhm.
And the question I asked myself was, do you want your daughter to grow up and marry someone just like this? And the answer was no. Okay. Well, do you want your son to be just like him? And the answer was no. So then I'm like, so why would I stay in this? Because I would ask him if we could go to counseling. I asked him, many times, and he would threaten with divorce like every year that we were married. And of course, I was such a different person then. I was very codependent, very insecure of myself, and was really beat down. And it was a comfortable relationship. And I was just so hopeful that he would love me enough to have not done those things, to have
Right.
gotten rid of and wanted to get rid of the addiction. But bottom line came down is that there wasn't that case. And what was sad is I remember telling him that he was supposed, the Bible says you're supposed to love me, as you love yourself. And he said to me, well, you should count yourself very fortunate because I actually love you more than I love myself because I hate myself. And that was quite of an eye opener, when he said those words. And I thought, wow,
Wow.
he really has no ability to love because he just doesn't know. And he was, so broken. And
Mhm.
but I had to get out for survival. I mean, it just came down. He wasn't willing to make the efforts. And I knew that for my children's sake, because it was one thing that I got emotionally beat down, but it was another thing that my kids were, and I just couldn't have it. And
How old were the kids?
my kids were pretty young. My daughter was 3 and my son was a year and a half. So they were pretty young, and it was really right after my son was born that I think the light bulb really started to go off, because he had gotten arrested for possession of drugs. And like I said, things just kept getting worse. And then he was even worse with my son. Unfortunately, he was very unkind to my son. Like, my daughter was at least a daddy's girl, and he really favored her. But when it came to my son, it was a whole different ball game. And so I think it just, and I had to just pray for the strength. I was like, I don't know that I can leave, but if I'm supposed to, God, please give me the strength. And even at this time, I had grown up religious, but I don't think I really had like a real personal relationship at that moment. But I knew enough to know that the strength couldn't come from myself, because I just was so insecure, of who I was. But thankfully, you know, I was able to move on, and the blessing is that his family are such wonderful, amazing people, because they were so supportive. They called me up right away. Yeah, they
I was
called.
going to ask that if your family, because of the cultural upbringing that you have, if they were supportive or if they were.
Well, it took me a month to tell my mom and dad that I was getting divorced. It took me a full month because I was so scared to tell them. But the day that I told my mom, this just shows how moms really know. Because I never talked about my marriage. I never talked about the problems we had, because in my mind, unless you're going to fix something, there's no point to telling people your problems, because other people don't really want to hear your problems,
Mhm.
unless you're really in a place to fix it. And I wasn't, and I didn't want my parents worrying. I didn't, I didn't talk about my problems, but yet my parents knew. So when I told my mom, when I finally got brave enough to tell her what was going on, she said to me, "He's doing drugs, isn't he?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Honey, I know we raised you that you're supposed to stay married, but you have children to think about."
Right.
And it's almost like it's almost like they probably were just waiting for that moment to come. And I just couldn't believe that my mom and dad were very supportive in that. And my in-laws were so supportive that my in-laws called me up and said, "We're here for you. We love you. And we're so sorry this is happening. But we just want you to know that we love you so much. We wish our son, would go get help. And we love him too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we know that you can't, be in this relationship. But we're so grateful, for you." And so I have a very good relationship with my ex-in-laws. My children, definitely grew up knowing their grandparents. And my husband that I'm married to now of 19 years, the beautiful thing about him is that from the very moment we got married, he thought of my ex-in-laws as his own in-laws. And he tells people that he's so blessed that he has two sets of in-laws.
Wow, that's such a wonderful, like, wow. I've never heard of that before.
Yes, well, I know, and he is a very
But it's
special man for sure.
because he loves the kids and he wants and it's with the kids, right? Kind of
Yes.
building the family all together, and for their well-being, he is like
Yes.
drawn to these people that are just wonderful people.
He is, and I think too, he told me, because I remember when we got married, I had asked him, I said, "Are you sure you want to marry me?" Because he had never been married before and he didn't have kids, but he adored, Michelle and Max from the very get go. I think he fell in love with them before he fell in love with me. That's what I always say. But anyway, I asked him, I like, "Are you sure you want to marry me? Because I don't know if we can have kids together. Like, I don't know if you're going to have a biological kid." And, he said, he goes, that doesn't matter to me. He goes, "It takes more than genetics to be a dad." He goes, "And I love Michelle and Max, and as far as I'm concerned, they are mine." So from the day one, he would introduce them as his own kids, and they would call him dad. In fact, my son didn't realize he was technically their stepdad until his teacher told him, his first grade teacher. So he came home
Little.
yeah, he was just little. He came home and goes, "Mom, is dad actually my stepdad?" And I said, "Oh, well, what makes you ask that?" And he said,
Oh my
"Well,
God.
Miss so and so was telling me that he's actually my stepdad."
Oh,
And I said, "Well, yes, he technically is your stepdad at at this time, but it's not a stepdad like you think, like some of
yeah.
your friends may have." And so my husband was able to adopt the kids, when they were a few years later, and they were so excited. They were so excited. They wanted to take on his last name, and yeah, it's been a very sweet relationship for sure.
That
I'm
gives
very
me so
grateful.
much hope.
Yes, there are great guys out there for sure. And I've been asked by women before, like, how did you find a man like your husband? And my answer was always, I didn't. I said it had nothing to do with me because I'm terrible. When it comes to men, I said you could line up 10 guys and, and the one guy that I shouldn't be with is the one I will pick. There could be 9 guys that are really great, but I will be attracted to the one that is awful. I said, so it had nothing to do with me. I said, it actually has everything to do with Jesus because I just submitted everything. And instead of focusing on finding a man, I focused on getting myself better. So even though my husband, my ex-husband, was the bulk of the issue, I also knew though I had ownership. It takes two. It takes two for a divorce to happen. And I knew that there was something inside of me that allowed that relationship to last as long as it did. And I knew that I had to fix something inside, that if I didn't, then the only guys that would be attracted to me and I'd be attracted to were jerks. And so my focus became I want to be just the princess that Jesus calls me to be. I want to have my identity, in him. And I think when I got to a point where I was, just different, because even my husband, after a month of dating me, when we met, he told me after a month, he's like, I wasn't sure if I should have dated you when I first met you because I thought you were a player. Because I kind of had a couple of boyfriends when he met me because they
That's
asked me out, so I went.
right.
But I said, and but I look at you now, and he goes, there's something really different about you. And I smiled and I said, I think you're seeing a transformation right before your very eyes because I feel inside like I'm just becoming this whole new person. I can't even describe it. Like I'm coming out of a cocoon. Like I feel like I'm finally coming alive. And the thoughts and the ideas that I had in my head once upon a time are no longer. And I know that's not coming from me. I know that's coming from the Lord, that He's changing me from the inside out, that He's showing me, that I was codependent and that I needed to, basically change that and be a healthy person. And if I wasn't a healthy person, there's no way, I'd have a 19-year marriage with an amazing guy. So, anyways, I know that was kind of a long ways getting there, but
Amazing. I love. Thank you so much for sharing this because it's so important for other women, in the situation that maybe are in a marriage that they shouldn't be in to hear your story so they can if it's time to get out and they just don't know how to, you sharing your story is going to give them that reason, hey, this is not where I should be and it's time to get out.
yeah,
And also
and
it's possible.
and it's interesting because my husband and I, we do marriage counseling at our church, for couples from time to time when it's needed. And I really feel like, God has really placed that on us because my husband and I really have put marriage as a priority. We always did from the very beginning. But, even in that, I tell people if there's a way to work out the relationship, you should make all efforts to do so because even going through the divorce, even though it was the right thing for me because it takes two. It takes two to make a relationship. So unfortunately I had one that wasn't willing. But I would have regretted if I didn't take all steps needed to try to reconcile because
Yes.
he was he is the biological father of my children, and that would have been the ideal situation. It would have been fantastic for him to have changed and been transformed and our whole relationship transformed, but he had to have wanted that himself. So that was unfortunate, and because of the situation, that's where it was at. But I do tell people if you can, you should go get counseling, go do the therapies, go do what it takes because trust me, going through a divorce, I would not wish that on my worst enemies because anybody who's been through a divorce knows it's one of the most painful things you can ever go through because it's one person because you become one when you're married, and it's you basically your flesh is just it's just falling apart, and it's so painful. Even in the best circumstances, it's so painful. But that's not to say that, when you go through that, to not feel ashamed either, because I don't know how other people felt, but I know for me, I felt like the biggest failure when my marriage failed. I felt like I was walking around with a big L on my forehead, that I couldn't even make a marriage work, and what was wrong with me, that, that this marriage didn't, all those emotions that went through. And the reality is, like I said, it takes two people to make it work. And it takes really, well, I believe it actually takes, truthfully, three. I do believe that, Jesus in the center makes all the difference in the world. And I did not have that in my first marriage. My marriage now, I mean, even when we have our ups and downs, Jesus is the glue. And we quickly, come to the realization that we need to talk this out, or we need to work this through. And I do encourage, get counseling. If you need counseling, if your marriage is not doing well, don't be ashamed, to go and ask for help, because, there's a lot of people out there who are rooting for marriages to succeed, and they can.
Why do you think people don't?
It's hard, right? It's hard.
It's harder to stay.
I think so too, but I think for some people it's hard because in order to really make things work, it means you have to make a change. You know what I mean? When you've got two people entering a relationship, two sinners, two people who are selfish, who have selfish tendencies. I mean, we all start out well, we're all lovey-dovey and think about each other, but when we get into the mundane of everyday life, we can become selfish pretty quickly. It's all about, well, what are you going to do for me today? Oh, well, if you're not going to do that for me, then I'm not going to do that for you. Something switches. And before you know it, you've got this disconnect. You're doing this and he's doing that, and you got kids now, and that really amplifies the issues that you might have. You were not one together on vision, on the journey that you're on, and it's real easy to just think of what you want and not what the other person wants. And so, in order to basically want to do that, want to make the marriage better, you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to sacrifice for this person to be in my life? And Chris and I, we have to sacrifice almost daily, because it's really easy to become selfish. I mean, I'll do really good for a while, and then I know that when we get into arguments, most of the time it's because I got like, oh, it's my way or not at all. Yeah, exactly, Eric. A threefold cord is not easily broken. But I think it's because it's hard. It's hard to change. It's hard for anybody to change, because when you look in the mirror, when I look in the mirror, it's hard to see. It's hard to see my nastiness. To first of all admit that I have it, and then second of all say that I need to change it. And it's painful, because a lot of us have painful things in our lives, right? Something we have to work through, and not everybody's willing to do it.
The biggest problem, Eric is right. Let's switch to go to career. I want to know about your work. I want to know what amazing work you do now. I want to know. So, did college end up with a job in the college? In the degree that you studied, or was that a different path, or were you victorious? I know you're victorious. In all aspects of life. Were you super adventurous when it comes to career? How did that unfold for you?
Well, so I went to college and I studied dental hygiene. So I took an aptitude test in high school and I scored the highest in hygiene. And I didn't really know much about dental hygiene, but I went and talked to my dentist, and he gave me a summer job, just filing his charts and sterilizing the instruments. And so I'm like, okay. And then I went ahead and just went for it. I went to college, got my degree in dental hygiene, got a great paying job when I got out of college, bought my first home like 6 months later.
Wow.
I became a homeowner then. And so, yeah, it was really great, because I had a wonderful wage compared to other people my age. And honestly, and that was a great career, because after the divorce, I was a single mom for that time. And it is what helped me financially to be able to survive and get through. And so I've actually been a dental hygienist for 27 years. This is the 27th. I still work at the dental office 2 days a week. Although I did just give notice that I'm retiring at the end of this year. So I did officially let my boss know. And it's kind of bittersweet because I've been working for the same dentist for almost 17 years now. And it's like family and all that. But I do think that it's just time to go to the next chapter. So my husband and I, just to kind of get to how we work together now as real estate agents. So my husband became a real estate agent about 10 years ago. He was in law enforcement prior to that and then had a career switch, and he started to get a little busier. He was working part-time as an agent and also had a fitness appraisal business that he was working, assessing people's health, firefighters particularly. And COVID hit, and that contracts in California were gone, and so now he became like a full-time, uh, real estate agent. But prior to that, he was getting pretty busy and he was out of town some, so I was helping him with the clients he had, but it was getting to be so much that he's like, "You better go get licensed because we don't wanna break the law." So I'm like, "Okay, I'll go get licensed." And that was one of the best things that happened, is getting my license, because as we work together as husband and wife, we really have learned to really communicate better. We were pretty good before, but you really have to learn even more so when you're working.
Now this is a full partnership. It's not just family, it's work too. So it's like,
Yes,
wow.
exactly. And we actually work together as a really good team. Like, we were kind of surprised in some ways, like, wow, we actually get along. We actually work together well. I mean, there are days, that of course you're like, but that's with anybody. you know. But in general, we do make a great team, whatever his strengths are. He's basically has a strength where I have my weaknesses, and I have the strength where he has his, and so we really complement each other very well over the years. So I've been working along with him for the past 5 years, as a real estate agent. So we've built that together, and so now we're kind of at a place in our life where we feel like we're kind of at a crossroads of, do we continue to work real estate, forever, because we're working really hard. Like, we work a lot of hours. And the market's been kind of crazy. So it's been, lots of ups and downs. But one of the reasons why I ended up with Grow Live is that I was really feeling like I needed to expand my horizons and start really interacting and meeting other entrepreneurs, because I felt like we could do more. We just don't know how to do more. And I didn't grow up with an entrepreneurial mindset. And so I had a lot of limiting beliefs that, oh, that if that's going to cost me money, I don't want to spend the money on coaching. I don't want to spend the money on this. I can do this myself. Well, I look back now and like, we should have spent the money on coaching from the very beginning, because we would have made way more money than try to, figure it out on our own.
Right.
So,
It's
yeah, it's good. So
it's
that's kind of how I got there.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I love that you're working together, and I love that you're keeping your eyes open to what else is in the universe for you, so that what comes to you, you will be, looking at it, accepting it, or at least analyze it if it's the right thing for you.
Yeah, and it's exciting to, our kids are adults now. So our daughter, she is 24 and married. So her and her husband live down in Gilbert, Arizona. And our son is 22. And, so we've got full on young adults. So they don't really need us the same way anymore. And this is kind of an exciting time in our life, because from day one that we were married, we always had children, because I
Right.
had children coming in, and so it never has been just the two of us. And so that was kind of a scary thought at first, like, oh, what are we gonna do when the kids are grown? And are we
People talk about coaching other people when they become empty nesters. People talk about, the feelings and the change that you experience in your life when your kids are adults and they move on. And I think it's, a whole new, I can't even think about it. Almost just 11. So I'm
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
like years.
It's years. Yeah. And enjoy those years too.
I have years to go, but it's incredible. Zena, you're so victorious, and I appreciate your story and the fact that you shared and you're so open to tell us about your way of being victorious so much. It's amazing.
Well, I thank you for your encouragement and for you saying that. I do feel like that is kind of part of our purpose. It's kind of coming into more clarity as, we are moving in to this next step of what do we do. And honestly, we're at the point where we've decided that we are going to do coaching for entrepreneurial married couples, because I do see that there's a lot of married couples that own businesses, whether it's together or separate, or one owns a business and the other one doesn't. It's a dynamic in a marriage. It adds another layer to the marriage that can be very stressful, if you don't know how to navigate through that. And you can get so goal oriented that it's real easy to miss the sights of what's really important and to build that relationship, right? So because it is, I've really realized that I can easily be a workaholic, because you because I'm not clocking in and clocking out. There's always work to do. There's
Yes.
always something to accomplish, and I'm
I
an
admit,
overachiever.
I admit to be a workaholic, and I was gonna post something on Facebook last night. I cooked dinner. I literally stood up from my desk at 8:30, I think after our call, and I went in the kitchen to make dinner, still thinking about business. Alma hasn't eaten yet, and I was putting some chicken breast in the pan, and then as I put it, all the oil splashed on my dress.
Oh no.
And so it just, entrepreneurs forget about life so easy, where all they do is work mostly. And I speak, for myself here, mostly because I am so passionate about what I do, and I know that you're super passionate and you put your heart in what you do, and for your clients and for the work that you do it with your heart. And sometimes, many times actually, it's so hard to disconnect and put ourselves first. That's still a process to me. I'm
Yes.
still working on that, and thank God I have amazing coaches who tell me you got to be still and you got to stay still and take care of you. And how do you take care of you, and what do you do for you? Speaking of that, what do you do for yourself? Like, I know you're amazing, and your marriage is awesome, and you work so well with your husband, and the kids are now in their own adult life. What do you do for you? Teach us how to be victorious for ourselves.
So I make sure I have girlfriend time.
Okay.
I make sure that, that I do go out with my girlfriends to lunch, or have, get-togethers or something, because I think that's important to have those relationships as well. So I make sure that I do have a connection with friends. I also do go get massages, so I do take care of myself that way, because I need to de-stress.
Yes.
I also, yes, I'll go get my nails done and my hair done. So I do, and I love to shop. I have I kind of have a problem with shoes. I can't have enough. But and really, my husband and I have taken more time in the last couple of years, since the kids have left, basically they become adults. I can't say they fully left the nest. My son still lives with us, but he doesn't need me. I don't have to worry about dinner or any of that. He's self-sufficient. So, but anyways, we definitely taken more trips, and we enjoy, experiencing the cultural foods. We enjoy experiencing, the new scenery. And even though most of the time we're working during those vacations,
Right.
but we do enjoy, getting out and doing new things and seeing new places. So that's always fun. And I love, like, you live in Denver, right?
Yes, and you gotta come visit me. I'm gonna
Yes.
make you promise live.
Yes, next time I'm in Denver, well, I'll definitely let
Yes,
you know because I was just there in January, but anyways, I didn't realize you had lived in Denver, but now that I know,
yes.
but I love the mountains and I remember and I like the beaches too. I mean, the beaches is a very nice place and very calming, but there's something about being in a mountain town and maybe it's because I grew up in Flagstaff. I just love the smell of the pine forest. I love the breeze, the wind hissing through. I just love the mountain air. There's just something calming and peaceful about being around mountains, for me.
Oh,
And
you gotta move to Denver.
I,
Why are you living there? Just move here.
yeah, I know, huh? I love Colorado for sure. It's very beautiful. But now that my daughter and her husband live in Gilbert, which is 2 hours away from us, I told my husband the other day, I'm like, oh man, it's just too bad they really like Gilbert because they love it down there. I'm like, because they're gonna start having grandkids soon, and I don't know
What are you gonna do?
what I'm gonna do. You know,
Yeah,
he's like, well, there's airplanes you can fly back. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the same.
you gotta be there for them.
So
Mm,
anyway,
so,
who knows? Who knows? But
right.
that's just kind of it. But I definitely don't want to go down to the desert. I'm not a real desert rat.
No, it's
So
hard. I can't believe how much alike we are. It's crazy. It's like we're sisters from two different countries, from two different continents, and yet we got to, talk on this live and just wow. I'm so amazed, so amazed. Tell me, how do people find you? So what's the website that's scrolling on the bottom here, ChristinaBizCard.com. This is your digital business card,
this is
right?
the digital business card. So that probably be the easiest way to contact us, so you can definitely get that in the on your cell phone and you can download our contact and message and you can even text us through it. We even have an ebook on there for sellers, how to get your house ready to sell. And yeah, we've got exciting things coming on. We're also talking about probably rebranding our business. Right now, the Real Estate Warriors, which has been a great name. But since I started the podcast American Dream Makers, I'm really feeling that resonate a little bit more. And plus, that way, because we want to have divisions of our business, we're not just going to do real estate. Although I think real estate will always be a part of us because we do enjoy it in the investment part and we do commercial and residential. But we want to do a few other things that in the future will allow us to have a little bit more uh, passive income at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And we also want to do more, I think, with I guess relationship and just getting our message and purpose out. So, just there's just a lot of things that we're kind of working on and looking forward to doing. We'll see what ends up popping out, but we're still in the process of kind of heading towards all that, but it's exciting. But anyways, we're looking at rebranding. I think it's probably going to happen because it makes a little bit more sense.
You said podcast. What podcast?
The live stream American Dream Makers
Okay, tell
on
me
the
about it.
so on the Facebook, I just started doing the live streaming, because Grow Live
Huh?
was really encouraging all of us to do. And so I named it American Dream Makers because, well, I think it happened while we were on Grow Live because I didn't know. I kind of went back and forth between American Dreamers or American Dream Makers, which was one of the reasons why I wasn't doing it because I didn't have a name yet. But I think on Grow Live, everybody's like American Dream Makers makes, sounds great. So as I just went ahead and did the group, and now that I'm doing those live stream interviews, and I'm just seeing the beauty of the theme. I mean, we achieve the American dreams. We help other people live the American dream. And we want to continue to help people to achieve it, maintain it, or scale it. And so that can be either through real estate, or it can be through coaching, or it can be through, something else, where we can just come and help people with marketing, And so those were kind of the avenues that we were kind of looking at. And
I
So
love it. I love it. It's so awesome. I know you have a podcast, but I wanted you to talk about it because I wanted to feel your love for it, and you delivered. Oh my God.
well, I definitely want you on the American Dream Makers podcast because you are definitely an American dream maker, Theodora, and you
Oh,
are very inspirational. And I think there, for those of us who have been immigrants, I think there is a very strong passion to really achieve the American dream because that's why people want to come to the United States. So I don't fault people for wanting to live here because it is truly one of the best countries. I don't know that there's very many out there. I know there's arguments, but most of those people have not lived in those other countries to compare, but we truly still live in a country with freedoms. It's not perfect, but we still have so much freedom. We have the freedom to run our businesses. I was at an economic forum recently, and the chief economist was saying how the reason why America is still the strongest and will continue to be is because of our laws for businesses. The rule of law here allows a business to be able to fail forward and fail forward quickly with our bankruptcy laws and other things that are intact for entrepreneurs, that if things aren't going well, we can have a clean slate and start over, where other countries don't have that. And I did not realize that until he said that. And that is probably very true. If other countries don't have the ability to fail forward and fail fast, that would be hard. But he says because we have the entrepreneurship and we have the capitalism,
mhm.
it will continue to allow us to grow and thrive, in among other countries. And
Right.
so, anyways, yes. So for those of us who have immigrated, we definitely, the American dream is what we want to achieve. And then we get excited. We want other people to have the piece of the pie too.
Yes, and we want to help. Good evening, Jose.
Hi, Jose.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love
Thank
that.
you.
We
Yeah.
appreciate you. It's so true. The American dream is alive and well, is what I, like to say, because despite all the things that are happening in politics and in, White House and Washington, all of that, if we want to focus on that, we're just gonna miss what we have in front of us, and that is opportunities, and that is a good life that we can create for ourselves, and we can have, because we work hard and because we are here and we have all the, it's given to us pretty much. Like, you just want to do it because you can. In
Yeah.
other countries you cannot. And it's the bureaucracy. Like, I go back to Romania twice a year, and I always want to go and to see what changed. And being in America for the past 17 years, every time I go back, I want to know, okay, what else changed? How did you guys evolve? What happened? What's different? And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard for them to even open a coffee shop, or put a shed on the corner of their yard to start. It's so we're blessed, definitely blessed, and have an opportunity to live the dream.
Yes, and take it and have no fear. I that's definitely something that I've really come to conclusion. Our life is short. I mean, when you think about it, the years go by fast. A lot faster than we even realize, because growing up when 0 to 18 takes a long time, but
Yes.
after that it's so fast. And you don't want to live a life of shoulda, woulda, coulda. I should have taken that opportunity. I could have taken that opportunity. Do it. I mean, what do you have to lose? And
Mhm.
and the beauty of living here in the United States, and if you lose it all, so what? You can
Exactly.
start over again. This is the only country that you can go from nothing to something, and you see it over and over and over again, that many of the most successful people have failed time and time again. Some have even been on the streets homeless for a time, and yet they were able to get back on their feet and excel. So when you see that, you're thinking, then why have the fear? It's just money. It
Why not
doesn't
me?
matter. It's just money.
Yes.
But go live the purpose that God has given you, the destiny that He'd already planned in your life. Because if you don't live if you don't live the purpose that he has given you, then you miss out, right? And and you miss out on impacting other people. You miss out on them impacting you. I mean, there's more to miss out in not doing it. So I've just come to the conclusion that life is too short. There's a sense of urgency. Go out and love people and show the love of God to other people. Let them know how much, they're special and they can do this too. That nobody has been shortchanged. Some of us have had some hard things. Yes, we've all have something we've have to work through. I mean, some of us more than
others. We all do.
Yeah, some of us more than others.
Right.
But we can change that. We have the opportunities to change that. So let's do it. Let's go. Let's go.
I know. Let's go. Let's be victorious. Be victorious is what we want to encourage people to be, because no matter what, having that victorious attitude, it helps. It helps going to the next level and just acknowledge the gifts rather than what we don't have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been such an honor having you. We're over an hour here, and I don't want to. You're gonna start charging me now because I'm like taking over your time.
I'm not gonna charge you anything, Teodora. You're too sweet, too kind. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you.
I appreciate you, and I did not know how much I love you until right now when I started talking to you more and get to know everything about you. And wow, you're truly a victorious person. And again, thank you for sharing your story so that we can help inspire and motivate others. Be victorious just like you. You're amazing. I can't wait to hug you. And if you're not coming to Denver, I'm going to send somebody to bring you to Denver.
Well, you can always come to Prescott too and bring your daughter too. It's beautiful here. I have mountains too here.
Excuse me. You got to be careful what you wish for because we love to travel. Now we're going to Romania next month, and Alma's actually on a mission to stay in Romania for 2 months. She wants to make money so that she can go to on a school trip next year. And so she calculated exactly how much she needs to make every day so that she can reach her goal of $3,000. And she's amazing. She's going to Romania to make money.
That's awesome.
To work.
Have a great trip. That's going to be so much fun. My daughter did 2 semesters in Budapest, Hungary.
Wow.
So, and that was just a few years ago. So we went to Budapest to see her. I did not make it to Romania, but I bet you it is beautiful in Romania.
It's so pretty. It's so different. It's a different world. And it's so beautiful. So yes, we're going to go together. First, we're going to meet in Denver.
Yes. And then we'll head out. Yes.
And then we'll head out.
Great.
We'll just fly over to Munich and then to Cluj, and it's all good. Zena, you're amazing. I appreciate you. Everybody is going to call you because I tell them to so. So your phone is going to start ringing here. And so if we need to buy a property in Arizona, then we'll just call you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And even if it's not in Arizona, if you want to buy a property somewhere else, I have an entire network connection with a bunch of amazing agents who love veterans and they take care of anybody. So, I mean, if you want me to help you vet out some agents, we certainly can do that too. So we just want you guys all taken care of. And so, yes, absolutely.
You're the best. I love you so much. I'm going to say good night to Eric.
Good night, Eric.
You too. Eric said, I'm going to get her husband. Yep, she is. And Jose, thank you so much for sharing Zena's card so that we can just click on it. And we appreciate you. I'm going to say good night to our audience, or good morning if they're in Romania, right?
Yes.
They might be watching from
you don't know.
The world. We never know. I appreciate you. I love you. And stay with me. Okay.